In 1896, the world knew one truth. Europe ruled. Almost all of Africa had fallen, colonized, carved up, conquered. But in the highlands of the Horn of Africa, one ancient kingdom refused to bend a knee. Ethiopia, a nation of jagged mountains and endless valleys, a people who cherished their freedom above all. And on the 1st of March, at a place called Adwa, they proved to the world that Africa was not powerless. This is the story of the Battle of Adwa, a masterclass in strategy, a testament to unity and the day an African army didn't just win a battle, it humiliated a European empire. The late 19th century was a fever dream of conquest known as the Scramble for Africa. At Berlin in the year 1884, men in suits gathered around a large table. With ink and rulers, they drew lines on maps, carving up a continent they had never seen. They didn't care about cultures, history, or people, they just wanted power. By the time the ink dried, the fate of a continent was sealed. France, Britain, Belgium, Germany, they all got a slice of the pie. Only two nations remained untouched: Liberia, a republic founded by former slaves on the coast, and Ethiopia, an ancient formidable kingdom high in the Horn of Africa. Italy, a new player on the world stage, was desperate to join the club. They had a late start and a chip on their shoulder. They looked across the Red Sea to those rugged mountains and dreamt of conquest. In 1889, after Emperor Johannes IV died, Menelik II of Shewa ascended to the throne. Italy saw its chance. They approached the new emperor with gifts and promises of friendship, eager to get a foothold. They proposed a treaty known as the Treaty of Wuchale. But this was no simple pact, it was a classic colonial trap. The Italian version of this treaty made Ethiopia a protectorate, while the Amharic version, the one Menelik signed, preserved its sovereignty. When Menelik discovered the deception, his fury was absolute. He immediately rejected Italy's false claim. In Rome, they saw it as a betrayal. In Ethiopia, it was seen for what it was, a cowardly act of deceit. The insult was unforgivable and the path to war was now open. Emperor Menelik II was no ordinary king. He was a modernizer and a master strategist. While Ethiopia was busy underestimating Africa, Menelik was quietly preparing. He was buying modern military hardware, tens of thousands of rifles as well as cannons and ammunition from Russia and France. Crucially, he was uniting his kingdoms. For centuries, Ethiopia was a collection of rival people: Amhara, Oromo, Guraj. But Menelik sent a simple, powerful message to every corner of his empire. The Italian threat was for everyone, and to his amazement, they came. By his side was the Empress Taytu. She was no figurehead, she commanded her own army. She was known for her fierce intelligence and was a key advisor. While Menelik debated, it was Taytu who pushed for a decisive stand. She famously declared, "I'm a woman, but I will not stand by and watch my country become a colony. I will go to battle myself if need be." She famously said, "Better to fight and die free than to live as slaves to foreigners." Together, they were the fire and the steel of the Ethiopian resistance. They were preparing a nation for a fight that would change history. In late 1895, Menelik sent his final call to arms. From every corner of the kingdom, the response was thunderous. Farmers left their fields, traders closed their shops, priests left their churches. They came carrying modern rifles, traditional swords, spears, even farm tools. This was one of the largest mobilizations Africa had ever seen. By February 1896, Menelik led an army of nearly 100,000 warriors north towards the Italian forces. They marched day and night, their songs echoing through the mountains, their prayers rising from every village. This wasn't just an army, it was a nation on the move. Meanwhile, the Italians, led by General Oreste Baratieri, had 17,000 professional troops. They had superior firepower, repeating rifles, dozens of machine guns, and long-range artillery. They were confident, arrogant even. They believed their technology and discipline would make a quick work of what they saw as a savage, disorganized army. But they made two critical mistakes. They underestimated the resolve of the Ethiopian people, and they completely miscalculated the treacherous, unforgiving terrain of the Ethiopian highlands. On the morning of March 1st, 1896, the sun rose over the rugged hills of Adwa. It was a morning that would forever change history. The Italians, in their overconfidence, split their forces into 4 columns. They advanced blindly into the mist-shrouded, treacherous valleys, and that's when the trap was sprung. From the high ridges, Ethiopian forces descended like a tidal wave. The mountains, which the Italians had thought were a natural defense, became their tomb. The roar of cannon fire was met by the thunder of 100,000 warriors. Confusion spread like a disease through the Italian ranks. Their columns, separated by the terrain, were picked off one by one. Entire battalions were surrounded and annihilated in close-quarter combat. By midday, the battle was a massacre. Over 6,000 Italian soldiers lay dead. Thousands more were taken prisoner. What had begun as a colonial expedition ended in a devastating, humiliating defeat. This wasn't just a loss. It was the worst defeat a European power had suffered at the hands of an African army. News of the disaster hit Rome like a thunderclap. The public was outraged and there were riots in the streets. The government collapsed and Prime Minister Francesco Cripsi resigned in disgrace. Italy was forced to the negotiating table, signing the Treaty of Addis Ababa, which formally recognized Ethiopia's full independence. Outside of Italy, the reaction was far different. For black people across the globe, the victory at Adwa was a seismic event. It was a beacon of hope in a world dominated by white supremacy. At a time when colonialism seemed unstoppable, Ethiopia's victory proved that a people could in fact stand their ground, unite, and defeat an empire. The Battle of Adwa was more than a military victory. It was a spiritual one, a victory for dignity, a victory for freedom. Even today, more than a century later, Ethiopians gather in the streets celebrating Adwa Victory Day. They march in honor of the men and women who refused to bow. They remember the day their ancestors wrote their defiance into history, not with a pen but with a sword. Because on March 1st, 1896, Ethiopia did not just fight for itself, it fought for every nation told it was weak. It fought for every people told that they were destined to serve. And in the valleys of Adwa, Ethiopia answered with a thunderous roar. We are free, we will remain free, and no empire will ever break us.